Perfect. Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the first DFA Network Crit. Can I get a round of applause? Woo-hoo! So excited for everyone to be here today. This is an awesome opportunity to bring the network together and share out projects and impacts that DFAers have been working on this incredibly unprecedented term. So thank you so much for having the time to come together for this moment of connection. My name is Ross Bernetti. I'm a program coordinator at DFA National and a DFA CWRU alumni. And I am excited to be your host today for this DFA network-wide crit. So the DFA teams are dedicated to using design for social impact, and the power of the network is behind them, as we can see today. I love all of the people calling in and everyone here that has come together to show support for these DFA teams. It's events like these where we take the time to channel our collective focus and effort into supporting these teams, but the network really shines and we get to see what makes DFA DFA. So thank you again for being with us today. I'm going to take a moment before we jump into today's crit to explain the Zoom norms and how the session is going to work. The Zoom norms for today is that we're asking everyone to be muted when they are not speaking or giving feedback. We ask if you're able to have your video on. We'd love to see your face today. And the naming convention is your first name / your DFA studio or the organization that you're associated with. The way to change your name, if you go to your thumbnail on the Zoom screen, you're able to see 3 ellipses in the top right-hand corner, and you can rename yourself accordingly, which I am also going to do because it is good practice to do the Zoom norms. When you're introducing yourself to give feedback today, please take a moment when you're giving the feedback to introduce yourself by giving your name, your pronouns, and which org you're from before delivering the feedback. Today's session is going to be taking place in 2 breakout rooms. Each team will have 15 minutes to total allotted to them. The first 5 to 7 minutes is for the team to present, and then the rest of that 15 minutes is open discussion and critique from the audience. Each audience member is asked to document their feedback in the provided notes doc, which I see many of you are in, and I'm going to put in the Zoom chat so we have that notes doc available for us to be inside today. The notes are formatted in I like, I wish, I wonder, which is a common way to give feedback. So if you like something about the team's presentation, if you wish something could be different, or you're hoping they do something, that's how we would like you to categorize your feedback. And when I say each audience member, I do mean every audience member. Students, alumni, professionals, your various perspectives and expertise will provide valuable guidance for the DFA teams. They'll have nuggets of wisdom, and we're asking everyone, including and especially the DFA teams who are also on the ground doing this design work, to share your experiences and your insights, as well as the professionals that we have on the call today. So as you're giving your feedback, please provide honest and constructive and supportive notes. During the discussion portion of the presentations and the crits, we ask that everyone speak up. The discussions can be very fruitful and they can really get going, but we also have to make sure we give equal time to every team. So please be respectful for your group facilitator when they say that we have to move on and switch gears, which is why we're asking that you prioritize your written feedback so that you can document all of your notes and have them available for the teams to access after this call if you don't get the chance to speak during that discussion portion. We did the best to prepare the notes doc with each guest. It should be in a column in the respective breakout group. If your name is not on a column, I apologize, but just please add it, make a column and find a place for you there. And then if anytime during discussion, you're reminded of something else or you think of a resource that you want to give to the team or the collective DFA network, please hyperlink in your notes so that they're able to access whatever resource you feel, or put it in the Zoom chat, all of which we'll be able to compile into a resource list to give out to the teams after this presentation. So don't hold back when giving feedback, resources, anything that might spark something that would be helpful for the teams. We ask that you're providing those. And so in addition to the feedback notes, each of the breakout rooms are also going to be recorded so that the teams can access and review what is said after this presentation and the critique is over, so they can reference and review how they presented, as well as hear the feedback as it was spoken, because we try to document as best we can so these things are referenced. And that is it. If there are any questions, please ask your group facilitator when we're in the breakout group. But without further ado, let's get started for the main event. So we'll be going into breakout groups. There'll be one breakout group for breakout group 1. Breakout group 2 is going to stay in this main room. So if you don't see a breakout group, just stay here. Okay. Alden, I think we are good to go.
Okay. Hopefully I did this right. If someone's not in the right room, it's an easy fix. So here we go.
So team UIUC, go ahead.
Just 1 second. All right, can everyone see the screen? All right, great. So hi, we are UIUC Studio with Steelcase and Future of Work. I'm Lauren, and on our team today that we have, I'll give you guys the full team, but some of us could make it today. I'm Lauren. We have Anna, Hadley, Isha, our main team today, and the people that we're missing are Mary Kate and Caitlin. There we go. So kind of to preface everything, we're just general feedback that we're looking for. We're hoping for feedback on the next steps to take in terms of our stakeholders and which direction we should start focusing on, such as COVID's impact on workspaces, perhaps what a change maker means. We'll get into that in the next slide. And the return to the office after going remote, just as like a couple of things to maybe for us to think about and how you guys interpret it once we present. So for our problem statement and overview, how can we activate and amplify change makers in companies for social impact? This was the how can we statement that we were given initially to kind of understand the scope of this project. And we're mostly hoping to either take this and kind of morph it into something else, but this is what we are essentially basing our primary and initial interviews on.
So for secondary research, we jumped into readings, articles, looking into statistics on sort of like the generational cultural shifts of how people are viewing work and workspaces. And what we found is that people see work today more as a part of their identity rather than their paycheck. They really care about company culture, whether or not the brand that they work with aligns with like their own core values and whether or not they find their work meaningful. On top of that, especially with COVID and this push for diversity and accessibility in the workspace, a lot of more people work remote, and sort of all those factors combined together, we found that the idea of a workspace has become more of an abstract concept, something that's more fluid and flexible rather than just a physical workspace. So if we can go to the next slide. So in our primary research, we've been interviewing stakeholders, and since given the current situation, we can't really go into office for on-site research. What we've done instead is we've asked our stakeholders to take pictures of their workspaces and send them to us. So what we've learned so far is that there's really like a difference in needs depending on what jobs have and sort of what characteristics they have. So even if like 2 different jobs use the same workspace, the way that they collaborate within those workspaces or like work in those workspaces can be completely different. So from these interviews, we've been starting to kind of spot patterns and characteristics of like what kind of jobs work well remote versus in person, what kind of jobs need a physical workspace rather they don't really need to. And this definitely aligns with our secondary research with the idea of the workspace being more abstract and more fluid rather than physical.
Alrighty, so our first key insight is into workspace design, and sometimes that a workspace is not needed. And so workspaces change based on what the job needs and what the person needs, and sometimes a physical on-site workspace is not necessary for certain jobs. And so our question is, how can we adapt workspaces to the needs of the worker and to the needs of the job? Also considering the needs of the worker, not just the job. And one good example of this is the caseworker at Lutheran Social Services. Her quote was from our interview was, "Most of the day I'm on site. We're really only in office to do paperwork or meet with our supervisor." So this really shows that the workspace is there, but most of the time the person may not be there. And you need to design a workspace around that consideration. You need to consider that they're probably not there most of the time and to best adapt their workspace to the short amount of time that they are there. And our second insight, Lauren, is work-life separation. Especially with COVID and work from home, this has become more important and more apparent in our lives. So what work-life balance looks like for different needs, and some jobs need a safe workspace while others do well remote. But we need ways to set boundaries for this work-life balance. And understanding how to achieve a healthy work-life balance will keep this project human-centered. So even though we are working on workspaces, you need to consider that we're human, and you need to consider that workers are the ones using the workspace. So even though that efficiency in jobs is important, we need to consider that people still come first and we're still humans. And this quote from Linda, she works at the US Department of Transportation. Her quote was, "Boundary between family and work has become blurred and not respected. And there's no clear cut end to my workday when working from home all the time." And I'm sure some of us can relate when we have emails on our phones and we can always log in anytime we want. So understanding this balance between when work stops and when life continues is important.
Some of the pain points that we've concluded from our interviews is that there were some issues with efficiency regarding communication with teams, especially virtually. And there's a lot more disconnection with employees. A quote from Roger Mao, a software engineer, he said that there's not enough project management, especially going up the ladder with the vertical interorganizational communication. So some design opportunities that we want to look into is how can we design to connect people virtually in their own companies? And we'd also want to further look into unconventional workspaces. So some design goals looking ahead for our project this semester would be to get at least 10 or more different stakeholder interviews. And we want to set up a poll on LinkedIn for some professional opinions and feedback. And we want to look into how we can further improve work-life balance, especially going off of like how the lines have been blurred, especially during COVID. And we want to come up with a visual document of all our research and establish some key personas. And we want to also look into finding a community partner.
So we concluded with some measures of success from all of this. We want to include insights from identified key stakeholders in our prototypes for future reference. Some key insights that are consolidated into more of a visual resource, as Isha previously mentioned, that can inform stakeholders when we're approaching them for either feedback or insights, expand the project scope and reframe or ideate as suggested by stakeholder feedback and input. And we are really hoping to implement bi-weekly check-ins with stakeholders to ensure consistent communication between us and them, because obviously, as Hadley previously said, they are the ones that are the ones affected, are ultimately the ones, the humans that are within these workspaces and utilizing them to the fullest extent.
Alrighty, so working off those goals, the next couple steps, the next 3 steps you want to work towards are continuing interviews, so continuing gathering insights into what our stakeholders want and what they need in their workspace, and searching for some community partners, so hopefully they can help guide us and bring us some more insights. And third is to begin identifying some key personas and what goals you want to work towards in the future.
And thank you. We really appreciate any feedback, and thanks for letting us present today.
Round of applause, Team UIUC. Thank you so much for your presentation. So now we're entering the feedback and discussion phase. I'd like to open it up to the floor to give their feedback and thoughts to Team UIUC. Adam?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm just pulling over to the side of the road right now. Oh, timing. Okay, so one, I wanted to say what I loved about it is this notion of what you surfaced was interesting relationships that people have with work. So in one way, what we're saying is like, I want my work to have meaning and purpose and to connect to my life outside of work. And on the other hand, you're saying, now that everybody is working from home, right? That work has become an abstraction. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's too, it's the transaction. I may be giving more than I'm getting out of that. And so I'm really curious as you're having these conversations with folks about that space of like, where is the boundary of when work is personal and what's not, and how do people identify or relate how they're navigating those decisions, if that makes sense? So it's like, I want my workplace to align with my values on one hand, to be an expression of that. On the other hand, if it gets too invasive or too connected to my personal life or my personal values, then it feels off. So I think that's a really interesting space that you've uncovered, and I would be curious to dig more. Anytime you see like a tension or a contradiction, that can be really good space to design from and to dig into. And so that I would encourage you guys just to keep exploring that area.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Any alumni or other guests, teams?
Yeah, I have something. I really like the identification of communication as one of the main barriers. I mean, I can imagine that's a difficulty. I mean, because it's even something that I'm dealing with when I'm working at home. But I also think it's important that you identify like this kind of like hierarchical structure, like the vertical communication is important. So I wonder like whether there are differences in the way that different companies like arrange their corporate structures and you know, hierarchical communication, and whether that impacts, you know, or whether it really is just kind of the same across all the stakeholders that you're interviewing.
Thank you. That's a really good point.
Yeah, so this was really cool. I think there was some very interesting insights about how work from home has changed work-life balance and also like office culture and communication. I think the scope is really broad. Trying to design a better workplace for all workplaces is like a huge thing to do. And I know that like a DFA project, you are limited. And so I think maybe I would encourage you to try to identify a couple types of workplaces or a certain industry or a certain type of worker that you think you could really have an opportunity to make an impact, and figure out like a specific subset of your stakeholders that you want to learn more about.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and we've been looking into narrowing down perhaps like office workers and how much time is spent in the office, such as from some of those quotes that we had previously taken. But thank you, that's a really excellent point.
If anyone else is interested in sharing their feedback, be sure to continue to write. I see a lot of keys typing in the notes doc. Thank you so much for doing that. I'd love to comment too as well. Thank you so much for sharing out your project. I just want to clarify what the design goals, when you were listing them in regards to it felt like they were kind of your next steps, like tasks, like things you wanted to do as your project, like, oh, we're going to interview, like our goal for this is to do these interviews. Knowing like where you're headed next is very important, but design goals and design criteria can also be used as the guiding, like the guideposts that you put. So from your insights, you find out that people love working in X way. So whatever future concept that you create or the thing you're working toward should be able to, our idea should do this, or they're kind of what type of descriptions or things can you establish for yourself based on the insights that you're finding in your team that you can use to check yourself against when you're ideating, like, does our idea do this? And so you're creating those measures, design criteria and design goals from the insights, and making those, having those so you know what type of final concept or ideas you, like what characteristics and qualities you want them to possess.
Thank you, Ross.
Robert, you were unmuting?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in. Hi, everybody. I'm Robert Bow. I am a design innovation leader. Been working for multiple innovation consultancies over the years. Great topic, really, really interesting. Workplace 2020, super relevant, super exciting. Such a big part of our life, especially nowadays, I feel, when the boundaries are blurred, right? Just like you mentioned. I think there's a lot of good work in here, right? But I think you can do a few things to sharpen your focus. I think you could have developed maybe 4 or 5 work archetypes, and each archetype, not a persona really, but an archetype explaining different ways people work depending on their industry or their specific tasks they're supposed to do, right? And then you uncover those insights for each archetype. It makes it much more actionable than trying to generalize across such a broad sort of scope, right? And speaking of scope as well, I think, yes, I think you do need to narrow the scope. You can focus on a specific service sector, industry sector, for example, or specific type of workplace, and so on. So I think you need to scope it quite carefully. And then I didn't really see a problem reframe based on your insights. Did I miss that during your slides? Did you actually reframe the problem? The initial one I caught about being amplifying, activating, amplifying this change agents, right? But did you actually reframe the problem based on your research?
At the moment, we've been trying to figure out just that, like how to reframe it.
Yeah, I would have loved to see that actually, because this is such a great opportunity really to, you know, to show that, right, to a broader audience, get feedback on it, because that's really how your research will culminate in, not just these insights, but also opportunities for improvement, obviously, but also a problem reframe. So I would have loved to see that. And then I had one more comment before what was that? Just looking through my notes quickly here. Yes, the measure of success also. I think the measures you had right now are really around your research, right? And getting buy-in from your client or clients. But I think it should also be about actually aligning around a new problem statement could be a measure of success. That's super important. Not just the team, but also the client, right? But also moving forward, the solutions you are eventually creating, that's also a measure of success. That is actually more important than many other measures of success you put on that slide. So just make sure it's not just about your process, but also what you are creating during this process. But nice work. It's a really interesting topic, right? So I'd love to see where this all ends.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Malini, if you would like to round us out, I saw a hand up.
Yes, I'll add a sort of a last quick thing. So I'm Melanie. I am an alumni from DFA Michigan State. Graduated back in 2017, so not that long ago. But I would just say this is probably more of an organizational type of comment that you had listed a statistic for Gen Z, right? Which obviously makes sense because that's probably where you guys are all at. But the titles based on the people that you interviewed were probably all in the millennial category or in the generation before. So maybe just do a little bit of additional research and maybe separate the two. So while you mentioned narrowing down and focusing on a specific sector of work, I'd also say take some time to separate the two and ask both generations that type of question, whether it's millennials who have been in the workforce for a while or those like you mentioned in the Gen Z category where you had your statistic from.
Thank you so much. Okay, thank you again, UIUC. Congratulations. Big round of applause again for all of your hard work. Thank you so much for sharing it out today. Presenting your work is such an important part of the design process. So up next, we have DFA CRU CIA, my alma mater studio. I'm so excited for you to be joining us today. So without further ado, CRU CIA, you'll have 5 to 7 minutes to present, followed by feedback and discussion from the group. Feedback givers, so we'll be moving down a row to that, that team's row in the feedback document. So just know where you type in. Go ahead, CRU CIA.
Yes, hello. Do we have Emerlin in here? Yes, I have made it. I was previously put into the wrong breakout room, but I've made it. I'm safe, guys.
Want to go ahead and share, Emerlyn?
Oh, do you want me to share?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
so,
yeah.
okay.
You have it?
Yes, I have it up.
Okay.
Oh, God. Okay.
All right. Hello, everyone. We are the team representing Design for America at Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Institute of Art. And now all of our members will introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Emberlyn Miao. My pronouns are her, she, her, and I am a sophomore at the Cleveland Institute of Art studying industrial design.
Hi, I'm Nikhil Pareo. I am a junior at Case Western Reserve studying nutritional biochemistry.
Hi, my name is Adrian Watchman. I am a first year at Case Western Reserve University, and I'm going to study some form of engineering, though I don't quite have it exactly figured out yet.
Hi, my name is Elwin. I'm a first year at Case Western University, and I'm studying biomedical engineering.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Britton. I'm a sophomore at Cleveland Institute of Art studying industrial design.
And I'm Thomas Becker. I'm studying also at Cleveland Institute of Art, junior in graphic design.
So our community partner is the Cleveland Site Center.
The Cleveland Site Center goal is to engage, empower, educate, and employ the visually impaired. They're an organization located in Northeast Ohio. They've been helping nearby residents for over a century. They offer a variety of services to be independent in today's society, ranging from rehabilitation to vocational services. Susanna Mellas is the adult service director and is our point of contact. However, she is one of many talented and dedicated staff that serves a wide age range of patients at the Cleveland Site Center.
As you can imagine, there's obviously many difficulties that the visually impaired face in a day-to-day situation because our society was built by people and for people who can see. But specifically, our team will be tackling the problem space of vending machines that reside in the Cleveland Site Center. Staff and clients have reported a lot of difficulty and stress while using them, even affectionately naming one the spinning wheel of death. And they have requested that we come up with a solution to return their comfort using the machine as well as their independence.
All right, I'm gonna present to you some SLAP stats about the visually impaired. So around the globe, around 285 million individuals of all ages are visually impaired, 39 being completely blind, which is around 10 to 15% of the visually impaired. Greater than 90% of all published material is not accessible to the visually impaired. So that was according to the National Federation of the Blind. Only about 10% of all visually impaired know how to read Braille, and which is not counting the 10 to 15% that most legally blind individuals can still see shapes, lights, and colors to some extent.
So our How Can We statement is how can we help visually impaired staff and residents regain their independence while using vending machines?
So, sorry. Pain points are a way to further emphasize with our users, of course, and specifically for the Cleveland Site Center. So our potential solutions for the vending machine problems are better adapted to our users' needs. Visually impaired resident staff cannot use the vending machines independently is more or less the basis of many of these pain points, including sometimes dependent on staff members, or most of the time actually dependent on staff members. They have difficulty seeing the numbers, labels, foods, or honestly, any text on the vending machines. Fear of dropping the payment options, like the coins or the cards, and even just trying to find those slots actually are actually a big problem. Pressure to make the decision quickly, because obviously some of them really need to take their time to, work around the vending machine. And vending machines in general are more visual experience for the user. So, they are more visual with some textiles, sure, like you touch the buttons and that kind of stuff. But you look at these pain points and you feel a sense of loss of independency. And the fact that it's obvious these machines are, ill-equipped or not inclusive to the visually impaired.
So as you all know, creating personas is a big part of any successful design process, and that's especially true here. So we're working with a community of people who experience the world in a really vastly different way than the average person. So we can't make any assumptions. And so here are two of the personas we made to kind of help us through that process. First one is Richard, 55-year-old. He suffered complications from diabetes, leading to blindness and also some nerve problems. He can read Braille, but he finds the vending machine at his office really difficult to use, even though there are Braille dots on there. There's a lot of difficulty feeling the textures and understanding where certain parts of interaction, buttons and slots are. On the other hand, Maya is only 17. She is visually impaired, not completely blind, but she can't read Braille. And at her public high school, she has similar difficulty using vending machines, but that's because she can't read the buttons. She can feel them, but she can't read them.
Okay, so Charlotte has mentioned before with our How Can't We statement, our product vision has been defined to help the visually impaired staff and clients regain their independence. And additionally, we have already done product research and user market research. And just actually this past Wednesday, we had a very wonderful and insightful experience interviewing 3 individuals at the Cleveland Site Center. And additionally, since what people say can be different from what they do, we did a contextual inquiry and we observed how one of our users, Nicole, who is a visually impaired staff member, accomplished some daily tasks like using a computer and the vending machine. And we even took it one step further, as many of our members tried to navigate the process ourselves while being blindfolded. Moving forward this weekend, we'll be doing user analysis to articulate what we know about the users, like what they say, think, and feel. To ideate, we're going to be doing user journey mapping so we can visualize the process of our users making a purchase to allow us to consistently follow their narrative. And this will help us look back to where they would be having issues. And finally, we'll be rapid prototyping and testing. This is where we'll be coming up with a solution that can be reviewed and tested, and we'll be presenting it to stakeholders, developers, and users for validation, refining what's not working based on feedback. And hopefully we can solve as many issues presented as possible.
So in conclusion, one of the biggest obstacles that the visually impaired face day to day is a lost sense of independence. The Cleveland Site Center's goal is to hopefully empower its residents and staff to take back their independence. Therefore, through the modification of the CSC vending machines, Double Vision hopes to do the same. Through the collective collaboration and diligent research and motivated ingenuity, we will find a solution to this problem and hopefully create a more inclusive community and world. And we are grateful for any feedback and thoughts that you have on our problem space.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Crew CIA. I'm very excited by this problem space. So now I'd like to open it up to the group for feedback. Again, if you're interested, like physically raise your hand or just unmute yourself and go, and we'll create a line of presenters.
I'll go if you don't mind.
Go ahead, Robert.
Thank you. I really like this, actually. I really like the carefully framed problem space. So well done. It feels complex enough, but still narrowly scoped, right? Which I quite like. So you don't know really how to solve it immediately, which I quite like. But at the same time, it feels attainable, right? So well done. Did you guys come up with that problem statement, or was that handed to you?
Oh, yes, we came up with it.
Yeah, very good. Good. Well done. It's actually a very well crafted problem statement. So well done. Okay. I really like the whole presentation, by the way. I liked your pain points and so on. You could have, though, maybe taken a step further and uncovered those deep insights across all your research, both qual and quant. So maybe you could have taken your research beyond just pain points, but otherwise a list of pain points makes sense to me based on my limited knowledge. That said, I really liked your slide as well, showing the next steps. I thought that was very good. That you also covered the whole design process, not just not research. The only thing, this is a minor thing, but I wouldn't put journey mapping as part of ideation, right? You could use the pain points, of course, to kickstart your creative process. So you're using the journey map, right?
Right.
Or rather using the pain points and opportunities you have identified through the journey map in your ideation. But I would remove journey mapping there from the ideation part.
Okay.
Then I wonder, you had a stat there for the number of visually impaired across the globe. That looked very low to me. I know it wasn't its millions, right? Like 200 or 300 million people. That sounds super low anyway. Is that really, it depends how you define visually impaired, I suppose. But it sounds very low, I feel. I don't know if I'm wrong there. I will stand corrected in that case, but just my gut feeling, it sounds very, very low.
Yeah, I think we did get it off of like a National Federation of the Blind, but we might have to check on when that was last updated. Yeah.
And I think visually impaired as well, right? There are definitely different degrees of visually impaired, right?
Right.
I got glasses, right? And without glasses, I am actually impaired, right? So it depends how you define it. I would actually use a broader definition than sort of the technical or legally blind, right? They're also the gray zone. And I can promise you a lot of people, even with good eyesight, right, have difficulties reading packaging, right, you know, and vending machines and so on. So I think you can broaden a definition of visually impaired in a good way, I mean. Or even, actually, it could be one takeaway from your research that they actually define different degrees of visual impairments and actually come up with solutions for each degree, so to speak, right, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Or you choose it as a way to further scope your problem, right? That you're focusing on one type of visual impairment or a certain degree of visual impairment. That's it. Good work. I look forward to next steps.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, Elon.
Yeah, this was really cool. Nice presentation. I think I agree that the problem statement is nice and clearly defined. Maybe I missed it, but to me, it wasn't clear how you got there. And I think that would be a really interesting part of the process, not only just from like a design learning standpoint, but also I think what insights you had that led you to decide on vending machines specifically could help inform your solution of how to make a better vending machine. So yeah, that's something I would be interested to hear more about.
To answer maybe part of the questions, the problem space of vending machines was actually a prompt. It was given to us. It was actually like a major issue for the members of the Cleveland Site Center. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So then I guess just like finding out, talking to the people who said it, who raised it as an issue, and then more is the next step. So yeah.
Yeah, our studio has like a pre-existing relationship with the Cleveland Site Center, so they just came to us with like four actually different areas where, you know, their residents and staff said they have had issues, and we identified this one as a good one to maybe tackle.
Okay, great.
Ali?
Yeah, hi. You gave a great presentation. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Yeah, a very clearly defined problem area. I was really happy to see that. I think my one qualm is that I think that personas are a really important tool for sort of getting this generalized concept. But as you go further, you know, you've done a lot of work to get the data to create a persona. I think it can be dangerous to then just make that more abstract in a persona. It could just be useful to anytime you have a question where you would consult a persona. Consult your users and your clients and the people who you've interviewed. I think that, you know, even further than that, ask them if they'd, you know, like to have a larger step in your project, you know, sort of different than a community partner, but someone who really functions as a teammate outside the community, you know, sort of this undefined third space. Only because I think that personas, although they do try to limit assumptions, also invite them inherently. So again, yeah, great for understanding the problem, but for going further, I think you have a couple other options to make them more specific or to consult a real person.
Thanks, Ellie. Melanie?
Thank you.
Yeah, I will kind of echo the same sentiments that I thought that the problem statement was great and very narrowly defined. I also, like you briefly mentioned, that you attempted to put yourself into the shoes of the people that you were working with by blindfolding yourselves and figuring out like how that might work, which I think is great just for, you know, firsthand knowledge of understanding what it is that they actually struggle with. I would say, kind of echoing the other sentiment of interviewing and focusing on the actual users is important. And I know this is probably specific for the Cleveland Site Center of what they are experiencing and have noticed that vending machines might be an issue, but I just wonder the broader implications of this overall. Like, I don't know if there would be a way to pull statistics or maybe figure out if it's an issue in other areas of the country or of the world, or is this something that people just ignore because they can't access a vending machine? And do they attempt to locate food in other locations or things like that?
Thank you.
Adam?
I was going to echo the same thing, where it's like anytime you can really empathize, not that that's going to give you perfect information, but it helps you surface so much about like understanding how folks are experiencing. So again, props to your group for putting yourself in those situations. Mike, what I would encourage you to do is think about how are folks actively hacking it. So it's like there's this selection moment that happens that can't just happen inside of these vending machines, but what does it look like selection at home? What are those organizing hacks that folks use? Are they tactile? Are they material? Are they like, what other sensory experiences are they having that allow them to navigate ambiguity and choice, right? If I have 5 options in front, how do I pick that? So I would be really curious to see, are there other spaces that people have made those hacks in their home or in their work environment? And if you could pick up on those cues, what would the application or the abstraction of that look like in this vending machine experience? Yeah, because that can be a great way to see how folks are actively doing it, but they might not necessarily have the words to articulate this is how or why. And that's a cool thing that you as a designer bring to the table, is that sort of objective outside opinion to say, oh, you're doing this here, and it actually makes a ton of sense there too.
Yeah, we actually got a lot of really good feedback from one of our legally blind, interviewees about how sequencing and memory really play a role and being able to efficiently use the vending machine every time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, that's it. So round of applause, Crew CIA. Thank you so much for your presentation and the hard work that you've done. I'm excited to see where this project goes and the ways you develop it. So that concludes this particular group for the crit. Thank you so much for your time and your hard work. And I hope you take this feedback with you, sift through it with your team to identify what things you need to incorporate or would like to incorporate that will improve your project. Some final words. We have our next crit November 13th, so it's a month from now, and we'd love to have everyone here so we can see the updates about where you go and what you do during that next couple weeks. To conclude, I'd love to take a group screenshot to document this experience. I'd love to get everyone in one place. So I'm gonna have a countdown of 3, 2, 1, and then I'm gonna take a screenshot. So if everyone could, get themselves photo ready. If you have the ability to have your screen up, that'd be wonderful. So in 3, 2, 1, we'll say DFA, and then 3, 2, 1, DFA. Amazing. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone.
Ross, can I add one thing before everyone leaves?
Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, 2 things. One, thanks everyone for being in here. This was a really great first version of this. I'm really excited for all of us to be back in this call a few weeks and see where projects are going. I also really want to encourage everyone who was giving feedback, everyone's LinkedIns are in this document. if there's feedback in here that particularly resonates, you want to know more about, like, we really encourage you to be reaching out to people in this call, because this is a group of people that you're going to be sort of working with and talking to throughout the semester. So teams, don't hesitate to reach out. That's why we're here. The other thing I want to share and plug quickly is the Spark series is back next week on Wednesday. For those not familiar, the Spark series is a weekly webinar that we do to just bring the community together. And we're going to kick off next Wednesday. I'm going to put the link in the chat, with Leslie Ann Noel, who's an educator from Tulane University. She'll be in conversation with Liz Gerber talking about what are we centering in design education right now, and how do you sort of challenge the design canon that we work in, especially when it's non-inclusive, and thinking about sort of expanding that. So it's going to be really great. They're 40.
All right, and without further ado, we'll start with Team 1, RISD Brown.
Gloria, do you want me to share my screen, or do you have the slide?
Yeah, feel free to share your own screen, Hannah.
All right, hi everyone. We are the Increasing Voter Engagement team from Brown RISD DFA. My name is Hannah. I'm a senior at Brown in Urban Studies, and I voted already for this in the state of Pennsylvania, which is super important. And I have two of my teammates here with me today, Manny and Mary. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hi everyone, I'm Mary. I'm from Connecticut, and I'm doing the absentee ballot situation. Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Hi everyone, I'm Manny, graphic design, RISD 2022, and I voted about 2 hours ago. Like, I went in person early, and yeah, got it done.
Awesome. So today we're going to talk to you about how we might increase voter engagement. So our two main questions and goals are: how might we engage young voters and establish a habit of voting? And how might we facilitate an atmosphere of celebrating voting in our communities? So really just not only like using this election sort of as an experiment to how we can increase voting down the road in future elections as well. So we have two approaches to this project. Our first approach is using social media. The target audience for that method would be about 18 to 30 years old, using memes, infographics, challenges, and tags. I'm sure many of us have seen such formatting before on social media, especially on Instagram. And our goal is to create a sense that all of your friends are actively engaging in an election on social media, and internally for us to understand what kind of content sparks reactions among college students, or also a little bit older, approaching 30 years old approximately. And our other aspect of our approach to increasing voter engagement is public art. This target audience, depending on where we facilitate such public art pieces, on campus would be like 18 to 24, plus maybe some older students and faculty. And if we did things like in the city of Providence, it would be off campus, and that would be definitely an older voting base. So this format, we're exploring interactive installations or murals, and our goals are to engage local community, to create a sense of community, and to motivate others and passersby by showing how engaged their surrounding neighbors are. So feedback we're looking for is our phrasing and visualizations captivating, and what kind of age groups do you think we should focus on? I mean, there's really only approximately 3 weeks left until this next election. So really where we should focus our efforts, that would be great feedback. All right, Manny, do you want to get into the social media?
Yep, of course. If you could move to the next slide. Right, so we are thinking about Instagram story posts that kind of work as challenges in the sense that you kind of have to tag other people, and you kind of do like this kind of exponential like mass spreading of like why do you vote, or like kind of just like sayings that kind of people will relate to, and then people who can't vote as well, like international students that are part of the college community, can also still put it up and talk about their own countries and why do they vote and how do they move from there. If you can go to the next slide. Yeah, and we're just trying to basically create like a combination of stories and feed posts as well. And I think what we've realized is that the best way to kind of get some sort of information across is through humor and sort of making a parody of something, which is why we kind of use the fly. And like, don't let a fly do more than you in this election is something that we're kind of calling people out for it, but we're also doing it in a jokey way. So we're kind of trying to find like the fine line between making fun of the situation, but also informing people that voting is necessary for this year's election. Next slide. Yeah, so we just got some simple memes right here, and that call people out. I feel like memes are kind of in that realm where they call people out and like kind of still engage with people properly. So it's like, how do we get people to vote? Voting campaigns, flashy ads, showing people the reality of our democracy, and voting helps, like, matter to the integrity of our democracy. It's like, it's a simple meme, but it's effective because people recognize these templates and kind of get engaged with them without even realizing, and take away a lot more information than they usually would. So yeah, that's our approach with that. Yeah.
Thanks, Manny. And our second approach is public art, and specifically participatory-based public art, ways that we can get citizens engaged. So we have a couple approaches outlined in the following slides, and the rough timeline with those as well. So our first engagement method is sort of based upon a participatory-based art organization that we've been working with called Illegal Art. They've been doing this project called the Suggestion Box for the last 20 years, where they go around and collect suggestions. So we were thinking about making a box of giving people the opportunity to tell us why they are voting in 2020 and what is important to them about voting in this election. And we were thinking about putting this up in various places in Providence, and either going up to people ourselves or just leaving the box in a place and seeing how people interact with it by providing sticky notes and pens next to it. So really just it's also experimental for us to see how people engage with this, if the facilitator is anonymous or if the facilitator has a face to it, because we have found through research that people really want to engage and want to voice their opinions and tell their stories when they have the opportunity to do so. All right, Mary, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So the second approach we want to do is have something that's very visual that people walking by can see. So the simple idea is to have a kind of stencil format of the letters vote that people can fill in to a question such as, what in 2020 makes you vote? And so people walking by could interact and engage, but also it would just be a visual at the end as it gets filled in. It would fill in the letter vote. And be kind of, a very simple but hopefully effective way of getting people to, remember to and engage with the idea of voting. And I also think it'll be great because people walking by can read, the little details of what people have to say. So this is kind of a visual way of taking the box, but putting it up so people can read other people's views. And some lingering questions and things we have to figure out are, how do we do this in COVID times? I think there's definitely a way, but we definitely have to think about certain things. And yeah, so that's one kind of looming question for us.
Definitely. And another consideration for this and the previous project I talked about is, do we put these on a campus environment or do we put these in a city? Again, we have limited time, so we really have to focus our efforts and energy in one place. So we would love to hear feedback on that. And one more public art piece that we're considering is We the People. This is another art installation done by Illegal Art, and we have partners in a local community where we could erect this. And this isn't per se about increasing voter engagement, but just about establishing a more inclusive community where the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence is displayed in several languages, and people can read it and sign it, whether or not they're citizens or whether or not they're able to vote, but just to remind people on the forefront, on the faces of the city, that what we stand for, and that we are promoting a more inclusive vision of America. So timelines and goals, just to outline, right now we have roughly 3 weeks before the election, as I said. So spreading out the social media campaigns, like 1 each week, and then by the 3 art pieces that we just discussed, again, 1 each week, sort of in progression. And then we're also considering, like, this project does not end after election day. As we know, there might be a prolonged period of chaos because it might take longer than just November 3rd to count all the ballots this year. So how can we tackle, what can we do during that period of unrest? How can we implement some strategies during that time, both physically and on social media? So that's what we have for you today. Thank you so much for listening.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hannah, Manny, Mary. Everyone, let's do some snaps for Team RISD Brown. All right, and I can start off with my feedback and I'll invite everyone else. Amazing, first of all, amazing presentation. You were asking about captivating, like how captivating and where the visuals and the language that you're using. And I think that the approach, first of all, the posters that you made are very visually captivating. The humor and the memes, I think those do speak to a younger audience rather than an older audience, or definitely like an English speaking audience for sure. I really love the participatory public art. There's one thing about community engagement and community building that requires that sort of collective action in doing something together and then seeing the output. So one thing I wonder about the suggestion box is how are you thinking of then displaying all of the suggestions that people have put in, and how will people engage with that? I have more to say, but I'll open it up now to anyone else in the audience who would like to speak.
I would like to second that. I'm Aileen, for those of you who I haven't met yet. I'm a coach, a volunteer coach. And I had that exact same thought that Gloria just mentioned, which was what happens to those notes after they go into the box. And I was wondering if there's a way to incorporate those notes with your social media campaign so that it becomes more of a pervasive project that doesn't just exist either on social media or in the public space, but that, like I said, that it becomes more pervasive. I think that it would be probably, I think 18 to 30 might be too broad of a target, because 18 to 22-year-olds have pretty different ideas about where they are in life, I think, than say 26 to 30-year-olds. So I think that if you're looking for how do we focus this, I would maybe try to stick with a college campus for that reason. And also because campuses tend to be scalable things. If this works at RISD, it's a thing that then you could make work at other college campuses, whereas cities and towns can vary a little bit more. My other thing, I love the idea of some sort of a graphic animal that goes with this. And but I thought that the graphic fly on your vote poster was a little hard to read at first, and I wondered why a fly. You know, if you're thinking about something that doesn't interact much with the public, a fly would not be my thing. It might be more like a mole or a sloth, or some kind of an animal that you generally think of as like if your point is be more engaged than this thing is, then you maybe think of something that doesn't engage, whereas you're always trying to swat a fly away. I agree, great presentation and not surprising, so good job.
We have a couple minutes left, so any more feedback? I do see there's lots of people typing in the notes doc, so that's great.
If I may, just real quick, one reason that we have planned to put this box out before this poster is because we're hoping that some of the responses can begin to inform the poster, the mural, so that we can have some real examples filled into it that people can take as an example to then continue to engage with it. But we appreciate the feedback also, like merging physical art displays with social media. That definitely could be really creative and cool.
Hi, this is Izzy. I am currently a UX designer at IBM, and I'm a DFA RPI alumni. So I had a quick question. It sounds like I love the presentation. I love these ideas that you guys came up with. I think these would be fantastic installations in communities and the campus. I was wondering if you thought at all about more apathetic or, people who tend to not really engage in these conversations, and how maybe some of these installations could target those apathetic voters who aren't actually voting at all. Because I see a lot of people on social media saying now, like, oh, I always see like, have you registered to vote posts, and they're kind of getting tired of seeing it. And if you're not really engaged in the election, you're just going to scroll by, or just going to walk by these installations perhaps. So have you thought all about how you can engage some of those more passerby voters?
I think that definitely is primarily what our goal is, to engage voters. So we need to, you're absolutely right in that we need to consider those more apathetic voters in how we, where we place these public art displays. And as we had a lot of conversation about how social media, especially Instagram, is really oversaturated with like these infographics and stuff. So how are ours actually different? And Manny discussed this element of like tagging people, or these more like responsive elements that I haven't personally seen as much as like responding to something and then tag 3 friends to do the same. There's been a little bit less of that, and that pressure might help, but there definitely is sort of that question of how our ideas are unique from what is already on social media and Instagram.
I will also just quickly add that
we're at time. I'm so sorry. There's so much good conversation that is bound to happen from this. One thing we can do is for our guests and feedback, anyone who has awesome feedback they want to share with the team, you can also feel free to share your contact in the note stock as well to follow up with if the team wants to follow up with you or you want to continue the combo. We also have a discussion after all 3 presentations where we can share some of this. But for now, we're going to go ahead and have Team Elon present.
Hello, everyone. Unfortunately, I cannot turn on my video because my Wi-Fi is very finicky, so I don't want it to go out. But my name is Michaela Ford. I am representing my DFA team Elon today. So I'm just going to jump right into this critique. So the project and the problem that we decided to focus on at Elon was how can we destigmatize mental health among high schoolers? So we chose this topic because of this current climate that we're in with everything going on with COVID. We thought that having to work in an online space is definitely affecting students as we ourselves are being affected, and mental health is definitely a big topic, and it's something that a lot of our members related to. So there was a lot of internal passion around selecting this project. And it's very relevant today. So the kind of feedback that we're looking for today, as we are in the early stages of the immerse stage and identifying stage and sort of finishing that up, some feedback that I would love to get from you guys is relating to interviewing. So how many students should we be interviewing in this sort of challenge topic? How many is enough? How many might be too many? What's the primary interviewing technique that's working best at this time? So is it Zoom calls, surveys? What's the best way to sort of figure that out? And then how can we establish interview protocols for working with our community partners? So when we're talking about the topics as big as mental health and as personal and vulnerable as mental health, we do want to make sure that we're respecting people's wishes to, be anonymous or to just openness to share, and how are we going to handle their information, their private information. So just any feedback you have on that would be really great. So we started off by really looking at secondary research and understanding our assumptions and biases as the DFA process dictates. But some research that I wanted to point out, I've added on this slide. So 1 in 10 young people have a mental health challenge. Sorry, the participants are blocking my view. I can't see. Okay, 1 in 10 people have a mental health challenge that is severe enough to impair how they function at home, school, and in the community. Nationally, only 40% of students with emotional, behavioral, and mental health disorders graduate from high school compared to the national average. And then many estimates show that even though mental illness affects students from ages 6 to 17, 80% of them do not receive the mental health care that they need. So these are just some really big statistics that have sort of guided our research. So one of the key insights that we got from this research was that mental health affects both classroom and learning and social interaction. So it's not just something that happens at school, or it's not just something that affects their students' behaviors outside of school. It's very intertwined. And then also the fact that each person's coping methods and needs vary. So this insight was really big as we're trying to figure out a solution that can be flexible for students. So we don't want to just design a solution that caters to one type of student, but we also don't want to have a solution that's too broad so that it's trying to hit everyone's individual needs, because that wouldn't be very realistic. But just trying to come up with a solution that's flexible was a key insight that we got from some of our research. The second insight that we got from our research came from the CDC, and this graph I've added on the right. So looking at this graph, we see these ages 12 to 17 really high bars in terms of depression, anxiety, and behavioral disorders. So an insight that we gathered from this was to provide support as early as possible. If students are being affected with mental health at ages of 12, high school can be a little late to start trying to tackle that. So as we focus on high schoolers within our project space, how can we get to them as soon as possible, as soon as they start 9th grade, because that's already a little late. So what's the best, most effective, most fast way that we can provide a solution for them, whether that's as soon as they start high school or maybe the summer before. These are just some spaces and some area and timelines that we're kind of thinking out. So kind of relating to our question that we had for you in your feedback, our goal is to conduct at least 10 stakeholder interviews, because we think that's it's a lot, but it's not too little, but not too much, and it's a little bit more feasible for us to do. We're hoping to find one community partner. We've already been doing our community interviews with multiple people, and it's just a matter of sort of deciding who we want to work with now. And then we hope to have 3 key user personas that guide our research. So these user personas will help us determine how flexible our solution is versus like how broad it will be. So we're measuring our success based on how soon our solution is available to students. So whether that's as soon as they start high school or the summer before. We're also looking at hoping to communicate with our stakeholders bi-weekly. So having those check-ins, and then we're also hoping to really have our insights from our research pulled directly into our solutions and prototypes. So that's a really big key thing. And that's what we're really basing our success off of, that we're designing this with those insights in mind. And then we're hoping to obviously have the project completed according to nationals deadlines. So as I said before, our next step is really finalizing that community partner and then beginning our primary research. So we have done a lot of secondary research, but we want to start conducting those interviews so that we can really gather those user insights and then create those key personas as well. All right, so that's all I have. Thank you guys for listening, and I'd appreciate any feedback.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Team Elon. Snaps for Team Elon. I can start us off with feedback. Right, you were 1 minute early, so we've got lots of time for feedback. We have 8 minutes so far. All right, so first off, I think you did a great job sort of framing your project and being very thoughtful about the approach that you want to proceed with. From your insight number 2, I think it's right. It is true that the earlier you're able to bring concepts about mental health into a child's life, the more aware and the more helpful it might be for supporting that. But at the same time, it's never too late, right? To provide support, to provide healing, to allow people to, learn more about this topic. So I think what maybe you really want to draw from that insight is that in in the audience of high school, you've got freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Maybe what you really want to focus on is targeting that freshman year audience, and then coming up with different personas from that. I also really appreciated that you thought about your measures of success and are trying to define what are your design goals and how you want to quantify like the success of your project. I think you'll be able to refine those after you do more research and synthesize that research. The measures that you have will be more accurate and more narrow. Right.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm jumping in again. I have, first of all, I'm so happy that you're tackling this subject. I have very, very firsthand experience with this. My daughter is 30 now and finishing college, but in high school, she went from being a straight A honor student in her sophomore year to dropping out of high school in her junior year because of serious mental illness that just came seemingly from out of nowhere. So it's a really important subject. I am not quite clear. You talked about destigmatizing mental illness, and you talked about a solution. And so what I wasn't quite clear on was what students are you addressing? Are you addressing the students who are affected by mental illness? Are you addressing the students around those students who are hearing about mental illness and who need to be much more accepting and compassionate towards people so that we treat mental illness just like any other illness and can talk about it openly? Because I would assume you're not addressing, I'm assuming you're not trying to solve a mental illness, right? That certainly is going to be done by professionals. But when you talk about interviewing students, are you interviewing them to ask about what are their attitudes toward mental illness? How would they talk to somebody who has mental illness, or would they feel comfortable discussing their own mental illness? So those are the kinds of questions I'm wondering about. And I felt like I wanted to be more clear about what this problem was exactly that you were trying to solve, and what your design solution was headed toward.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Anu. I am from DFA Johns Hopkins Carey Business School in MICA. I want to first appreciate the concept because, like Aline and Glory mentioned, that it's very important and it's crucial to understand. I appreciate the time you guys spent on research and the insights that you have developed from your secondary research to come up with your success measures. And there are two things that I think probably want to know from you is, have you considered catch them young approach? Because you're talking about young students, and even if you're saying that they're first year or sophomore, instead of that, why introducing it a little earlier before they enter the high school so that they can be better equipped to address it, as against they get into the well and then start swimming. So that is one thing. And secondly, I am also curious to know, with the various approaches in your studies, are you considering working with schools to understand what offerings they have at this moment? Because especially with COVID, there are schools taking a lot of measures to get insights and understand what issues students are facing and how to support them. And there's a lot of research that's coming up which talks about how schools are going out of the way to support students, encourage their continuing education.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have a couple minutes left, so yeah, I would welcome other people who have been sharing notes in the document to also share what they have.
Hi, this is Roger. I delighted to be here. Thank you very much for your work, all teams. There was a tactical question about how many people to interview, and I just wanted to let you know that what we've found over and over again is that for any particular persona or profile target audience, that you get a lot of differentiation in insights across at least 4 to 5 people. At 6 people, we have seen pretty consistently you start the fall off, and then after 6 it falls off dramatically in terms of the amount of different insights that you're acquiring. And when you've got multiple personas and you've got to make hard decisions about where you stop your research, I would suggest to you that 6 would be the minimum requirement for you to get the amount of insights that give you kind of the 80-20 on getting the most bang for your buck.
Right. I was also going to share that, Roger. I was going to say, like, the average for design research is about 7 people for that sort of insights curve that you gather. Yeah, and on that point, you also mentioned like interview techniques and protocol. In terms of the standard, like what should you think about and set up when you're interviewing someone, DFA has a bunch of resources for that, and I can send you that after this call. But regarding mental health, if you're engaging on this tricky topic that may bring up trauma or bad memories, or it's a lot more sensitive, you might want to consider that trauma healing cultural differences that may come up when you're speaking about these topics. You can also see if you can find a high school like therapist or mental health practitioner who can give you some more guidance on how they work with high school students in that regard. All right, so we are at time for Team Elon. Let's do another round of snaps for Michaela. Thank you so much, Michaela. And for our last presentation of the day, that will be Team Fordham. I am going to be screen sharing a video that they've pre-recorded. So let me do that. Let me take a minute to set up my tech. All right. So, okay. All right, I don't hear any sound. Do you hear sound? Okay, let me try again.
In addition to screen sharing, there's an option you can share your audio as well, I think before you start.
Okay, share computer sound. That's fine.
Presenting for the first critique.
Yep, we can hear it.
Hi everyone, this is Fordham's DFA studio presenting for the first critique. So just an overview of our project. Right now our focus is education. We're focusing on supporting teachers and student autonomy. So the original how can we statement was, how can we provide teachers with the support to create more autonomy in the classroom? This really is, we decided to emphasize on giving college professors the resources they need to construct lesson plans that emphasize autonomous learning for their students, especially online during COVID-19. And a lot of our secondary research has shown that studies have found that autonomy increases motivation in the classroom. So just for the rest of the presentation to keep in mind, the type of feedback we're looking for is on our refined how might we statements. We actually just finished reframing today. So we are totally open to change on that. And any opinions you have on the other parts of the project are also welcome. So for our primary research, we gathered 15 interviews from university students, K-12 teachers, and Fordham professors. We also conducted a focus group among ourselves with the DFA members. Lastly, we interviewed our community partner, Dr. Ann Fernald, who is special advisor to the provost for faculty development at Fordham, and she has been a very good resource in helping us understand this problem space. We mainly asked questions on previous experience with autonomous learning, what could be improved, and what was already working, with an emphasis on online learning. And one of Dr. Fernald's quotes is, "It doesn't always require a lot of money. It does require the university offer people the time and space to think," which I think is a great approach going forward for our project. Okay, and these are just a few of our quotes that we've gathered so far in our primary interviews. And I'll just pause for a few seconds to let you guys read those. And then here is our affinity diagram. We actually found that we had, because this is such a broad topic, we had a lot of categories that we found just through our primary and secondary research. Okay, so for our key insight one, we found that professors don't know how to use digital tools to create successful lessons. They're feeling very overwhelmed right now by just like the large number of tools that they're supposed to be using. And they're also experiencing things like Zoom fatigue right now. So we want to make sure that whatever solution we come up with, it's not using some overly complicated software and it's kind of a familiar technology. And for our key insight number two, we found that online learning has decreased classroom connection, both with student-teacher connections and student-to-student connections. And it's also decreased discussion opportunities. Students kind of feel like they can't have the same spontaneous and like natural connections and ability to participate in their classes as they do in real life. And why it matters to our scope is that we're definitely trying to like center our solution around the current 2020 issues with COVID-19. And forming connections is also a very crucial step in creating autonomy, we found. So we think that this is definitely a very interesting insight to keep in mind for our solution. Another part of what we've done so far is creating personas using one of the mural templates. And we kind of just did this. We made a couple for students and a couple for teachers, just to kind of gather some information about their pain points, needs, quotes, personality types, just to learn a bit more about the users that we're addressing. And a couple of our design goals, like I mentioned before, students and professors are using a lot of different tools right now. So if our solution revolves around something digital, we want to make sure that the tool and like the form is widely known and already exists. The technology should also support the social factor that is given in traditional in-person classrooms. And our last goal, based on one of our insights, found that understanding the educational goals of an assignment is an important factor in student learning. So we want to make sure that students feel like they know why they're learning or doing what they're doing in the classroom. So this is one of the things that we're trying to do with our project. And today and last week, part of what we were doing was narrowing down our how might we statements. So the main two ones that we're working with right now and ideating off of is how might we help teachers make lesson plans that cater to students' affinities, and how might we structure classes to develop professor-student connection so that students feel more comfortable reaching out for help and support. And basically our next step, and what we started a bit in our meeting today, is ideating and then eventually picking one of the ideas to prototype. So thank you very much for listening, and we're excited to hear some of your feedback from what we showed you. Thanks.
All right, so snaps to our last team, Fordham. Let's see, who from Fordham is in our chat today, is in our call? Do we have a Fordham representative in our call? Okay, we might not, but I think what we're doing is we can still give feedback on the presentation. We won't hear anything back from anyone, but this recording will be sent to the team so that they have something to reference. And I think since we've already seen their presentation, that'll be useful for them. And I can start off. Yeah, starting with the interviews, I thought that the preliminary research that the team did was pretty thorough, doing interviews, also having a focus group. I'm interested in maybe expanding that focus group to be more than just DFA students, because DFA students do have a particular characteristic and archetype, at least in some ways. And it could be interesting to involve different types of students as well. Yeah, and then in terms of the second insight that they brought up, I thought it was interesting, the connection they made between forming connections being crucial to autonomy. I think that maybe connections is more related to personal engagement and a sense of community in the project or in the classroom, and that might be a different theme that the team could focus on. Is there anyone else in the audience that wants to share bits of feedback?
I would like to know, I would have liked that, well, let me first start by saying that I loved seeing all of the design process. I thought that was really interesting and great, and thank you for showing that to us. And I also loved that sort of tension between connection and autonomy, and it feels a lot like, you know, asking students to go away and come back and go away and come back, which I think is important with virtual learning. What I would have liked to see is some sort of a definition of autonomous learning, because that can mean a lot of different things. So I would hope that you would sort of, if even just for the people, for the audience, because you probably have an idea of what you mean in mind, but convey that to us so that we know what you're talking about more specifically.
Yeah, one thing that you said, Aileen, I think is related to one of the thoughts that I had about the final how might we's that they created. So the first one is about student affinities, and the second one was about building, creating classroom structures that build connection and support between teachers and students. So with that, I feel like the research done so far, I still don't know that much about the other restraints that teachers and professors might be having. One of them is technology, but what about time constraints or you know, the amount of time that they can contribute to a structure, how much leeway is there within the 1 hour class to build in extra sort of things. I think learning what those restraints are, if there are any, would help to further define the kind of concept that you create.
I have something to add.
Yeah.
Hi. So working as a TA myself, I really appreciate this a lot. And looking at the insights and hearing the research work, I think with their approach, it's very interesting to know the challenges of students as well as the professors. I'm curious to know if they're also taking into account the other support staff, for example, teaching assistants, online learning teams, which involves technical teams, the content development teams, because it's huge back-end work that is never taken into account and that defines the experience that students face, but they're not in purview of that aspect. So I think taking into account their challenges so that you create really holistic and more a project that will see day of the light. And I appreciate their work. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Anu. It's like, yeah, what you mentioned about who are essentially like the other stakeholders, the secondary or tertiary stakeholders that are related, that maybe aren't those primary actors of just professor and student. I think that's totally super key. All right, I think we're gonna wrap up here, but so first of all, thank you so much everyone for being here, for presenting your work, great jobs, and also for providing valuable feedback. We do have another network crit that's happening next month. Students will be, our teams will be further down in the design process. We'll have come up with ideas, concepts, and maybe starting to prototype and test those. So look out for another invitation for that. The last thing that I would like to end on is to take a group photo to document that we're all here and we had an awesome time with the DFA network. So what I like to do is have everyone turn on your cameras if possible. And then on the count of 3, maybe we'll just do like, I don't know, jazz hands, like on the left or the right? Okay, so on the count of 3, so I'll do 3, 2, 1, jazz hands, and then everyone put your hands up and then I'll take a screenshot. Okay, all right. 3, 2, 1, smile. Yay. All right, thank you everyone so much for that. And have a lovely rest of your day.